Whoa. All right, you guys. Welcome to Whiskey and Weird. Um, it's a little crazy. It's real crazy for me right now because I'm not in a space that I'm completely used to, trying all sorts of different things. But I'm super happy to be doing this. I've missed it and I've been putting it off for a really long time. So, just dive right in. Totally just dive right in. I mean, I'm not even sure how this setup's going to work. Let's see. It's out maybe a little better. All right. Look at us. Um, anyway, I have a super, super awesome guest tonight in a few minutes. I'm super excited for you guys to see him. He has a great story. He's waiting patiently for me. Some of you might know him, actually. So that's going to be really fun. But thank you for those of you who are chiming in, listening later on the podcast and on your favorite whatever podcast app. I appreciate you listening in whenever you do so. And for those of you who are listening later to the recording of this video, I'm really grateful that you're here. But yeah, I'm super stoked. And I'm going to get started as I usually do with drinking a little whiskey. Now, tonight's whiskey, I'm not going to lie, I've actually had it before. It's the Woodford Reserve Distillers Select. It's a Kentucky straight rye whiskey. Now, this is actually one of the few ryes that I like. I'm not a big rye whiskey fan. Most of the ones that I've tried, I haven't been too happy with, but this one is pretty great. And so I'm going to just kind of do a little retasting, if you will, and share my thoughts on it. My friend Jeff, he bought this, wanted me to drink it on the show tonight. Now, Jeff kind of just caught on to the whole whiskey and weird thing today. And he has a ton of great stories, UFO stories and otherwise. So I'm thinking I might need to have him on in a few weeks and just let him share his weird with all of you. So just a little tribute to him, though, my buddy Jeff. I'm gonna take a little sip on this during the show tonight. But if you're just getting here, I'm gonna drink some Woodford Reserve. We're gonna talk about UFOs, or UAPs as they are aptly called these days. And as I said already, if you missed it, I have a super awesome guest tonight. I'm super excited about it. So some of you, again, might know him. You might have met him. But let's drink a little whiskey. Let's test this out. So it's kind of hard to do a real tasting because I've had this before, but this stuff is so smooth. I smell honey. Honey comes through a lot for me with this one. And I kind of like that. It's probably why I deal with the rye of it. As I was saying, if you're just getting on, hi everybody. Make sure to comment that you're here, what you're drinking, whiskey or otherwise, and let me know that you're here. I've missed everybody. This is super fun for me. Hopefully I don't drink too much whiskey while I'm on. Drinking some Woodford Reserve. I've had this before, Kentucky straight rye, but my friend Jeff wanted me to sip this. And as I said a moment ago, for those of you just chiming in, Jeff has a lot of great UFO stories and otherwise, but he's kind of new to the whiskey and weird bandwagon. So I'm going to have him on maybe in a few weeks in the future. But tasting this, sipping this, let me know what you're drinking. You guys, this is a really good whiskey. It's really smooth, hardly any burn, just enough to remind you that you're drinking something good on the way down. And I've kind of gotten used to drinking some not so fancy whiskeys just because I like to drink whiskey a lot. So it's kind of nice to just be able to sip something that's really pleasant. And yeah, honey. I get honey. Smooth and sweet like honey. All right. My friend Sean is on. Hi, Sean. Congratulations on your team. The big winners. That's so great. I want to see the tattoo that you said you're going to get. That's pretty great. You guys chime in and say hi. Let me know what you're drinking. I see that there are people on, and it makes me happy. But I want to know who you are because I know you're some of my most awesome supporters. So it is time. It's time now as I'm sipping my Woodford Reserve. Earlier, I was trying to say this word, not drunk or anything. Woodford. I kept saying Woodford, and my boyfriend and I were making a lot of jokes about saying different things. We were just talking to somebody yesterday, actually, about saying the word roof, saying woof. Oh, it was his brother, roof instead of roof. And he knew someone who couldn't say wolves, and he says wolves. So anyway, we had this whole like 3-minute conversation about there being wolves on the roof and drinking Woodford Reserve. Yeah. Anyway, we were doing that. It was weird, and we weren't even drunk. So anyway, sipping that. I'm ready. You guys ready? Hi, Tracy. Tracy's drinking some Sauvignon Blanc from Australia. That sounds quite nice. And she recently had a birthday and an anniversary. So happiness all around for these things, my friend. I'm ready to bring on my super great guest. You guys, you're never going to believe this. Tracy, you'll appreciate this. It is my most awesome dad. My dad is coming on the show tonight. I'm going to bring him on. As many of you know, he is retired Air Force, as was his father, was a career Air Force. And he has a story he's going to share with you that's actually was an experience my grandfather had. So I'm going to bring him on. So I would like you to welcome, I would like everybody to welcome my dad, Marty Bonin.
How
He's
you
on
doing?
here. You guys might not be able to see the resemblance. Maybe you will. Hi, Dad. I love you. Thanks for being here with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, as you know, I'm doing a little show chatting about UFOs, or as they are currently known, UAPs. And I remembered the story you told me about Grandpa. And I'm really bad. I need to write things down or record them so they get details better. So I thought it would be perfect to have you come on and share that story because there's a lot of that stuff, even if it was once, restricted, confidential, whatever information is now coming to the forefront, right? So it's probably okay for you to share it, right, Dad?
Yep.
Cool. Well, Tracy Jarmello's on tonight, Dad. She says hi. Jonah says
Hi,
hi.
Tracy.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So, Dad, first of all, share with the audience, like, about just, a little about yourself and your experience in the Air Force. I mentioned that you were career Air Force. Do you want to share a little bit about that? And then you can share a little bit about Grandpa and tell the story.
Okay. I spent 26 years in the Air Force. I flew as a weapons systems officer in the back of F-4s, um, and then had some other inspection jobs and stuff that I did as I got. Once you get to a certain point in your career, you don't fly anymore. You do office work and stuff like that. So anyway, but I spent 26 years in. I retired in 1993, and then since I had computer experience, I got some training, and I was a senior systems tech at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas for 17 years, and I retired out of there at 70. So that's been living a retired life since then. So
Yeah, as
and
you as you should be, as you should be.
and my father, he spent 28 years in the Air Force. Um, he was a senior officer, and what he related was not something that he experienced directly, but as some of you might know, they had Project Blue Book was open from I think 1962 to or 52 to 1968. Anyway, somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
there about 1954 or 55, I was in like the fifth or sixth grade in elementary school, and my dad was talking to the family one night and telling stories, and he said what he had this thing that he saw about an event, and it was I was thinking back and I figured out that it was probably like a C-54 or a DC-3 prop plane actually. And some of you, if you've read history, you might know that those kinds of airplanes are what did the Berlin airdrops when they had the Russians wouldn't let anybody do anything, so they had to drop food in there, and they also used to drop candy in for the kids. Anyway, there were some guys flying one of those, and they had this object. As I remember, it was probably about 5 or 6 feet long, maybe a foot wide, and it went in the back of the aircraft just in front of the door and made a perfectly cigar-shaped hole in there. And the object, whatever it was, it then went and slowly went up to the front in the cockpit and sat there for a little bit. And then it went back to the back of the aircraft and left through the same hole it came in. And of course, when they landed, it was obvious to everybody that something had happened because there was a hole in the side of the aircraft, and they never were able to explain it. Of course, like the Air Force and in fact the military in those days tried to explain things in a way that probably was not really. They were just trying to hide it, and get it out of the public's eye. But people see things, and it's a little bit hard to disregard them. So anyway, so that's my story.
You know what? That's a super cool story. And I thought it was really pertinent to share it because just as I said, so much is being released about what the military and the government has experienced and the stories that they've been reviewing for years and years. So Dad, you mentioned Project Blue Book. Was Grandpa involved with that in any way other than having to report that incident?
No, I don't think he didn't report the incident. He had access to Blue Book because it was not a classified program at the time,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's why the public could see a lot of the stuff that was going on as well. So.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't know that about it. I mean, I know there's been different programs and
that was one of the stories that was a little bit different. Most of them were, seeing lights in the sky and shapes and all that kind of stuff. But this one, was obviously physically involved. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. What did Grandpa think about it? Did he express any opinion or emotion around the whole incident, hearing and sharing it?
Not that I recall. No, he just thought it was really interesting, and that's why he wanted to share it with us. So.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's super cool. Dad, thanks for coming on and sharing. Jonas says, super cool. Thanks for sharing and thanks for your service, Mr. Bonin. Mary Pierce is on. She said to say hi. I don't know if you can see the comments or not, but everyone,
no,
Tracy
I
said, hi,
can't see
Mr.
anything.
Bonin.
All I have is you're in the show.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, there's definitely people watching who know you. So that is a really great story. And I'm grateful that you shared that with us. And we'll probably have a little conversation about it, but I won't make you stay on too much longer. Because I know it's a couple
Okay, well,
hours later.
see if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah. Oh, good idea. Does anyone have any questions for my dad before he goes off? About that story, even about his own service in the Air Force. Give it a second. Sometimes it takes a second for the comments to pop up. And sometimes too, Dad, because many people watch this later and listen later, I'll get comments from them afterwards. So if they have any questions for you, I'll relay them on and be sure to answer them.
Okay. I can do that.
Yeah, so I'll keep an eye out, see if anything pops in right now. But so my friend Sean, he said, thank you for your service. He says, what's the best story you have? And I don't think it has to be UFO related. Maybe it's just a great pilot story.
Yeah, well, you know me, Lauren. I could sit down for 6 hours and tell you stories.
That's really true. But you don't have You don't have any, have you had any UFOs? I mean, living in Las Vegas, you know, I had my own. I'm going to share it tonight. I had a UFO experience in Las Vegas. Or do you
Yeah,
know
never
anybody that did? Do you know anybody, Dad, that had an experience in
and
Vegas?
there? No, I don't.
Yeah. All right. Well, lots of people commenting. My friend Jeff says props to my pilot dad. So I'll let you know if anyone has any questions about that story, but I don't know. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Sounds like some alien beings. Oh, my friend Sean said his dad flew C-141 and C-5 in the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sean and I went to high school together
Oh,
at Valley.
you know, one story I might tell you when I went to F4 training at George Air Force Base in '68. They take you out on what they call a dollar ride, which is your first ride with an IP, and they kind of break you in on the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pilot I was with, we went over to Death Valley, and Death Valley is 200 feet below sea level,
Yeah.
and we flew at 100 feet above the ground, which meant I was flying at 100 feet below sea level.
Oh, wow. That's kind of waggles your brain a bit.
Yeah. And then there's the other one I tell a lot of people is we used to do what we call at the same base we did what we do it at all bases, but we had check flights where if an airplane had a problem and somebody supposedly fixed it, then a qualified pilot would take it up and check it out. So I had this one old hard-nosed pilot that had I think a couple tours in Vietnam, and anyway, he had me as his backseater, and we took it up and wrung it out pretty well, as we used to say. And somewhere along the line, we got above the operational ceiling for an F4 was 50,000 feet for our model, and we got up to about 55,000 feet. And then I mentioned to him, I said, I think we're outside of parameters here. And he says, oh, yeah, you're right. So he points it toward the ground, and we ended up doing 1,250 miles per hour, which is about Mach 2.2, I think, something like that at that altitude. So I went pretty fast early in my life.
That's awesome. Those are super cool stories. Thanks, Dad. Thanks for sharing that. Now I have it recorded too, so I'll always remember how it all went down.
Okay.
But so, really quick question. Do you believe in aliens and UFOs, Dad?
Yeah, there has to be something out there. You know, there's got to be other beings in the universe besides us. So
Yeah. Well, before you go, what I remember is when I used to ask you about it when I was young, you used to always say to me, I can't tell you or I'd have to kill you. That's what you would say. I don't know if you remember that.
yeah.
But that's a great answer. So anyway, I love you, Dad. Thanks for coming on. I know my listeners appreciate your story and appreciate your service. And I hope to see you soon in person.
Okay, just remind everybody to support vets anytime they can.
Absolutely. You guys heard it straight from my dad's mouth. Support vets whenever you can. We absolutely do. Cool. I love you, Dad.
Love you too.
Take care. Sleep
Right.
well.
I
Bye
will.
bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, you guys. That was a pretty cool story, right? 1950s. And let's see, Jeff says, so your dad, Jeff, fought in Vietnam. So did my dad. He flew F4s in Vietnam. And we will definitely have you on, Jeff, to share your stories. But so you guys, my dad mentioned that Project Blue Book, and it was actually, hold on, I have some notes. It was actually closed. It was 1969. So Dad was really close, 1969. But you can go back there and they reference a lot of things, which, to be honest, I didn't think were available back in that time. I thought that that was still kind of a top secret thing. Although, today we have such easy access to all sorts of information because we have, the web, we have the internet. As a matter of fact, I went on today and found all sorts of crazy stuff. So I'm not even sure that it was just something that people knew that they could access if they wanted to, but apparently, according to my dad, it was something that people, it wasn't private, it wasn't secret, it wasn't confidential, and people were sharing. Although I know, as far as the military is concerned, especially, not so much in the public life anymore, but still in the military, there's a lot of scrutiny, and, a lot of stuff that makes people not want to report their experiences. But yeah, so we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. There's some new organizations out there. One from the Pentagon, and NASA, of course, is also got one. But I think I want to share my own stories of UFOs. I mentioned when my dad was on that I had an experience in Las Vegas, and of course, Las Vegas is actually considered a hotspot for seeing, aerial phenomenon that people cannot explain. But this was back in probably 1989. I was a sophomore in high school at the time, and my good friend Lisa and I were driving out to her house. Now, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, you know where Henderson is, Green Valley. Maybe you've been out to the resort out there. When I was in high school, Green Valley was just getting built. It was kind of growing and changing at that time. And my friend Lisa lived in this new housing development, and right behind her street was just miles and miles and hundreds of miles of desert, which at this point is mostly filled up with homes and all sorts of things. But we kind of came to this last street. Beyond that, it was desert. And we were coming home to her house one night and just saw these lights that couldn't have been more than a couple hundred yards above us. And it was straight across, 3 lights, and it was just hovering above the road. And she and I we were flabbergasted. We were looking up, watching this thing. It's just hovering above us. Didn't look anything familiar. It was too low, one, to be an airplane, too big to be a helicopter, and it wasn't moving. It was just hovering above us. So we quickly pulled into her driveway. Her house was just 2 houses in on the street, and got out, ran back out to the street. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing in the sky. There was nothing to be seen. Couldn't hear an airplane, couldn't hear a helicopter. It really, really freaked us out. Of course, we were dumb enough to go to volleyball practice the next day and tell everyone. So it became a joke on the team that we had seen ET or whatever. But again, going back to the idea, people don't always want to hear these stories or believe them. And when you share them with people, they want to explain it away. But when you see something like that, there's no explaining it away. There's nothing in my experience as a human being that could make sense of what I witnessed that day. I've also just actually in the last couple of years had 2 other experiences. One of them, maybe I could explain away, but I'm not going to do that yet. I was actually nannying for this little girl, and we were hanging out outside, and I looked up in the sky, and there's something moving really far in the distance in the daytime sky. It kind of looked like it was kind of square shaped. It was really odd. And at first I'm looking at it and I'm like, maybe it's like a weather balloon. It seemed really far up in the sky to be a weather balloon, but I thought, maybe that's what it is. But I kept my eye on it. I'm watching it, and it comes to this point in the sky where it was like it disappeared, but it was almost like it went behind something, like it cloaked. I couldn't explain it. It just disappeared out of the sky. I had been watching it for probably 10-15 minutes, and it just disappeared and never came back. But it was weird the way it looked, because it just looked like it went right behind something and disappeared. So couldn't couldn't explain that part. And then also another experience I had not too long after that, as most of my listeners and watchers know. Hi, Michelle. Most of my listeners know that I was doing ghost tours in downtown Seattle before I moved here to Coeur d'Alene, and I was standing outside. It was nighttime. It was dark, waiting for my guests to arrive for my tour, and just gazing at the stars. Just something I love to do. And I was watching this light move across the sky, which is always fascinating to me. I was trying to figure out, is that a satellite? It was really big to be a satellite. And then I thought, well, maybe it's the space station, because the space station is pretty large in the night sky. But as I'm watching it, it stops where it is and takes a perpendicular turn and just shoots off really, really fast into the sky to where I couldn't see it anymore. And I thought immediately, that is not satellite or the space station. And mostly in that moment, I just felt super grateful that I had witnessed that, because there is no doubt in my mind that that was not something of this planet. The way it moved in the sky, it was super, super, super cool. But those are my experiences. And I mean, I think most people in this day and age, right, believe that there has to be something, you know, curious. Is there anyone watching right now that believes that there's no way there's UFOs or aliens from other planets, or maybe questions whether they would come here to our planet? I'm curious. Chime in, comment now or later if you're listening. I feel like most people generally think it's really probable that there are other things going on in the world. You guys chime in. What do you think? Also, really curious to know if anyone else, raise your hand if you have an experience, because I could probably quick join you in if you have a quick story to tell. That's not you, Jeff Jobs, because you're going to have to come on another time because you have way too many stories. But I'm really curious who's had experiences with UFOs or aliens. So earlier today, I was kind of looking through the internet, and I don't know if you know, but just today, actually not today, it was last week. I lied. There's a story in The Guardian about a fellow who is a former intelligence officer by the name of David Grush. And he has gone before Congress and made the claim that the government actually has spaceships, has aircraft that are not of this world, and partial aircraft, and probably way more aircraft than they would ever want to lead on. So I think that's kind of fascinating, and I'm curious, what do you think what do you think is the likelihood of that? I know many people believe that Roswell was the first opportunity for that to happen. And I was reading earlier that if you go back and look, my dad mentioned Project Blue Book, and there's no mention of any of Roswell in Project Blue Book, which is a curious thing, right? Is it because it really didn't happen, or because it was so significant that we couldn't be told that it happened? And sometimes I wonder, you got to wonder, like, conspiracy theories and things are really fascinating to me, because they're not all really far off base. Like, why is the government now all of a sudden, for instance, deciding that they need to tell us about UFOs and aliens? Sean just chimed in and said 100% they have alien artifacts. Absolutely. I think that that's partly how technology has advanced as quickly as it has sometimes, maybe. I think that's a pretty strong theory. And but like, Roswell wasn't in the Blue Book, so Project Blue Books, is it real? Is it so real it can't be shared, or is it not real at all? I guess we'll never know. But what do you guys believe? I want to know what my listeners and my watchers are believing about that. But I was really fascinated as I kind of scoured the internet earlier today to find out something. So you guys know that there's been a lot of stuff released, right, from the military, the Navy in particular, um, pilots, all sorts of people sharing stories, and they've released it. And I was saying to my boyfriend earlier today, I was like, well, do you think they're doing that because we are experiencing so many things now, technology, people are having experiences and sharing them immediately on technology, social media videos that they're recording, all of this. And is maybe this a way for the government, for the military to try to maintain some control? Oh yeah, we know that there's UFOs out there, but we know a lot about them and blah, blah, blah. I'm curious what you think about that. Mary says she agrees, definitely have gotten info from others. Yeah, I think that our military and militaries and governments all over the world have been interacting with alien species for a long time. Um, I feel like it's really self-centered to think that we would be the only like intelligent beings throughout all the countless galaxies in the world, right? But also to acknowledge that they're coming to our Earth means they're way ahead of us. So that's probably why they don't want to say it out loud, because they don't want everyone to know, right? So anyway, the Pentagon established what they call the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Okay, let's say that one more time and just listen to how stupid this name sounds. The All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and they're charged with tracking UAP. UAP, really quickly. So many of us know this as the unidentified aerial phenomena, which is the new acronym we use for what was formerly known as UFOs. But what I discovered earlier today is that NASA and the Pentagon have recently updated that acronym, and the P, the A, well, the UAP, the A in UAP is no longer aerial, but anomalous, because they are now including sea, like strange phenomena that happens in the oceans and the waters. So that's kind of fascinating. So they're now considering UAP to be unidentified anomalous phenomena, no longer aerial phenomena only. I'm just going to take a peek at some of my footage. So Jonas says cop cam footage in Vegas recently of what they thought was a falling star, and then some cops get called to a scene of 9-foot tall beings fell into their yard. So we saw this one and we were trying to find it. There was a guy that had a video and it really wasn't great, but yeah, the cops were a little baffled because they had seen something weird falling from the sky. And then 10 minutes later, someone called and said, there's something just landed in our backyard and there's 8-foot tall creatures. I'm going to have to do a little more research on that, but a little interesting coincidence. And the cops even said, I'm not going to lie, I was really curious because we just saw this thing in the sky and then you guys called us. Is this still here? But super cool story. Sean says, I think you can back me on this, but growing up as an Air Force brat, I would ask my dad about odd occurrences and his answers seemed somewhat veiled to answer without answering. Yeah, absolutely. It's like what I said to my dad. I've always been curious about this stuff, and especially after I had seen that UFO when I was a teenager, my dad would just always say, if I tell you, I'll have to kill you. And that was just his way of being silly. But, I know my dad worked in intelligence. He did stuff that he will never be able to tell me about. So, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. There's always going to be secrets, people. Like all this information that we're getting from the government and from the military, it's only to get people to quiet down and feel comfortable or satisfied with the fact that they're acknowledging it. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It doesn't make any sense at all for it not to be, right? Right now, I just read that the Pentagon is currently investigating 650 UFO or UAP incidents that have been reviewed. But they all, they all comment, well, we can't prove that they're of alien origin. Well, of course, they're, probably never ever going to say that to us. But yeah, so there's that. There's NASA. NASA has, their own organization, which is actually the first time that an organization that is not directly affiliated with the military or the government, it's the first time NASA has actually created a panel to look into these things. But who might be better than the people who are watching the space all the time and what could be floating around and entering our universe? This story that Jonas mentioned, the NASA and other organizations claimed it was a meteor that fell through the atmosphere. Well, actually, NASA got there was only one organization that cited it as such, but then everyone cited that organization. But I mean, who's to say that just because you see something falling through the atmosphere that it's because a meteor is just foreign matter, right, that falls through the atmosphere and burns up and lights up. So who's to say that that couldn't have actually been an alien spacecraft? I don't know. Like it doesn't really answer the question as far as I'm concerned. Curious, you guys, I'm gonna keep asking this. Anyone out there ever seen a UFO? Or as we say, UAP. So UAP, aerial phenomenon or anomalous phenomenon, can be all the weird lights. Like people see really crazy light things in the sky. I actually had a neighbor who had a great video of stuff that he was sharing, that he shared with me. I kind of wanted to get it ahead of time, but he had his own experience with seeing weird light anomalies in the sky that no one could understand what they were. So this new way to call all of these things is basically so that we can encompass all these different things that people are experiencing. Sean just commented on the meteor color from that Las Vegas incident, and that it looked blue. I think the cops said it looked green to them, which of course is not usually the color of a meteor. However, garbage, sometimes does fall through the atmosphere, and it can burn different colors and that kind of thing, I guess. So there's that. But yeah, it was interesting and a really weird coincidence that someone just moments later said something just landed in our backyard. I'll see if I can find this other weird video we saw. It really wasn't that great. We didn't watch the entire thing, but the guy was trying to show that possibly there were people, or not people, there were aliens still hiding out in the back of the clip. That was the video clip that you see, that they never left, but they were actually in the back, and trying to show that it was really hard to see. I'm not to say it wasn't happening, but it was really hard to see what was going on. While I'm thinking about it, you guys, there's a lot of cool information out there. The National Archives for the UK. So the UK, they released all of their UFO information 10 years ago. In 2013 is when they decided that they were going to share that. And you can go on to their website, nationalarchives.gov.uk/UFOs. I'll share these later. The CIA also has a reading room where you can go on. It's UFOs, fact or fiction, but there's pages and pages of stories and that have been shared throughout the years. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff out there to read, and the number of incidents is almost alarming. Really, it's really alarming. So yeah, check those out if you like to look into that stuff, because it's out there. But I kind of wonder, like, going back to this conversation about why the government is doing this now. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you agree that it's you agree with my theory that it's basically just another way of controlling the conversation, right? So people are seeing things in the sky. People are seeing creatures. People are seeing creatures walking on the earth that they can't explain. And granted, There's a lot of videos out there that are messed with and created. But if you ever meet with someone and you talk with someone who's had an experience, as I've said many times before, I tend to believe someone when they really believe. Like you can't. I don't. It just seems really disrespectful to try to talk away somebody else's experience when you weren't there, and the emotion that comes with it plays a huge role in that. Um, but yeah, what do you guys think about that? Again, you guys haven't ever had experience. Am I the only one? People who live in Las Vegas, I know there's a few of you on here right now. I know you've had experiences before in Las Vegas because that place is crazy. Um, but yeah, tell me what you think about that and how it's been. Um, I saw this one video not too long ago, and I'm curious if people have just ever seen weird light things where it was like a light, and I'll have to share these. I'll have to find it, but it was like a light. It was an infinity of lights in the sky, and these are the kinds of things. It was just a bunch of little dots in the sky, and people were recording it, and they were like hundreds of people seeing this in the sky. I mean, it seems to me that if this is something that's, one thing if it's experienced by a single person who's just simply telling a story versus nowadays where we have hundreds of people with video cameras and iPhones and all of this stuff, and they're all standing around shooting the same thing at the same time. So when I have these organizations from NASA and Pentagon who are telling me, no, we can't prove that they're of alien, origin. And perhaps that's true because we don't know a lot of aliens, or most of us don't. Um, but like we can disprove a lot of things, right? So in paranormal investigating, when we have an experience, if I go into a home and I'm investigating or a location and I have an experience, I'm gonna I'm gonna like go through everything I could possibly think it was and decide whether or not it actually was that. And a lot of times you go, nope, it wasn't that. And you go through this check off list, right? And then you get to the last thing and you go, well, maybe I can't say it's a ghost. However, I cannot tell you whatever the hell it was because it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it wasn't this. So that's basically what they're saying to us, because if it was something that could be scientifically explained by what we know and is common knowledge or common, just what's available to people on this earth, they would be able to say that to us. No, this is this. But for them to say, well, we can't prove that it's of alien origin. Okay, we get that because we don't know who the aliens are. We can't go and say, oh, those were just, a couple of Spanish, you know, visitors from, whatever. I don't know. We can't do that, I guess. But it just seems like such a silly cop out. What matters to me and what is most intriguing to me is the numbers and numbers of things and incidents that people are recording all the time. Grace, hi, Grace. I'm glad you're listening. Grace was also a high school classmate of mine, had an experience looking towards Sheep Mountain. Ooh, do tell. You should tell us about this. Was it just a light anomaly, or did you see something that looked like a ship moving across? What? Tell us a little more if you have a minute, and you can share that here. I want to hear more about that. But yeah, lots of stuff happened in Las Vegas, and I bet if we were more likely in those days to be looking up at the sky, I think what's happened, right, is that more of this has intrigued people, had kind of piqued their curiosity, and I think people are spending a lot more time looking up at the skies and noticing more. So I think there's all of that that's happening at the same time. But yeah, what do you guys think about that? You guys talk to me here. Tell me what you think. But Grace, if you have a second, share with me more about that. So we've been talking about UFOs. I want to know what you guys think about the possibility that there are already aliens living among us. Now, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of theories around this. Oh, taking a break. Grace just chimed in. So she saw green lights dancing on the mountain. We all knew Area 51 was out there. We would just sit and wait for something to happen, and it did. Yeah, totally. That's pretty fascinating. Yeah. So the interesting thing about that is, perspective, someone will come in and say, well, maybe it wasn't aliens, maybe it was just the military. But then you ask the question, well, where did the military get that particular technology from, right? So that's really cool. That's super cool. Like green lights in the sky, that's just not a thing. There are not green lights in the sky unless they're aliens, as far as I'm concerned. Cool. Thanks for sharing, Grace. That's super great. Um, but yeah, going back to aliens and the earth, like there's a lot of people that suggest that is a thing already. And you know, if they're coming to visit, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they want to come down here and see what we're doing and live among us? I mean, think about how humans behave, right? So if you're going, I mean, scientists go to a new country and they go and they live among the people. And granted, they don't necessarily go incognito, but they go and they live among the people and they get to know how they behave. And sometimes it's for good reasons and sometimes it's for bad reasons. I just watched the original Avatar again the last couple nights. Took me 2 nights because I can't watch the whole thing in one sitting because I fall asleep. But because it was late, whatever. But as you know, because I think everyone's seen Avatar, right? We were watching it so that we could watch the new one. It had been years. But as you know, humans go to this alien planet and they get in there and they make like they just want to know what's going on, and it really had me thinking about this episode, like how they treated the people and how there were people that wanted to know about them. And there's this really fascinating you know culture of beings and their connection to the planet and the trees and all of this. And then you had other people who just saw, oh, there's something worth money in under that tree, and we're going to get it. But they did exactly all of that I would imagine any species throughout galaxies might want to do. All that is to say is that there are going to be good ones and there are going to be bad ones. And everyone I know that has studied this subject really believes in the subject will say the same. No, aliens are not inherently good or bad. Um, just like people. And they're going to have different motivations for things, but they're going to want to learn. Maybe their planets are struggling somewhere, and they need to find a new place to be, or maybe they're just out to learn. So it's not unlike how humans are. I just don't. That's my opinion. I'm curious if anyone shares that or has a different idea about aliens walking among us. Um, do I think like I'm going to go to work or go to the grocery store tomorrow and be like, that dude's an alien? That dude's an alien? No, not so much. I don't know that I believe it's that prevalent, but I do think they're here. I do think they're watching. Um, I think that they creep up in some really odd places. One of my favorite stories, I mentioned I love the show Ghost Hunters, and the original Ghost Hunters, Jason and Grant, they wrote books together. And one of the stories, they kind of shared the things that they had experienced before they had a big TV show and all of this. But they talked about going out to this farmhouse in the Midwest somewhere, and they had been called there because these people were seeing things and having things come in their house and hearing noises. And short version of the story, they got there and they started investigating, and they caught these really crazy looking beings peering in the windows. They were like, 8-10 feet tall, really long and skinny. Makes me think of those creatures in Star Wars, the ones that are building all the stormtroopers, all the clones. Do you guys remember those really tall things? I can't think of what they're called. Um, if my daughter Emily was watching right now, she'd probably be able to tell me, but that's what I think of. But they honestly said it was the creepiest thing they've ever seen. And I've heard, a variety of stories from paranormal investigators that come out and say, you know what, it's kind of creepier than finding a ghost is seeing something that you believe is probably an actual living creature from another planet. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool. But so I don't know. I think of that story and people and how these things have probably been coming to the earth forever and ever. Like if you go back to like hieroglyphics, there's creatures on there. There's things that look like spaceships, and um, they've been coming forever. But now all of a sudden, we can record them in different ways. We can share our experiences. More people have a common shared experience of seeing a UAP, and it's becoming a more mainstream notion, and people will talk about it more often, and maybe not necessarily second guess themselves, which makes it all really fascinating. Uh, that that video just made me think of this. So the statues in the Virgin Islands, the ones that no one can figure out where they came from, and they're the big long, like almost like rectangular shaped heads, humongous. uh, Watching the video of the Las Vegas incident, and the guy that I saw that was trying to show where these aliens were in his video, and he referred to them. He's like, they actually looked like the heads of them looked like the shape of those actual big stone creatures. And it was funny. I'm watching it, and as he's saying that, I can see it in the video. Now, I didn't have a great frame of reference because I didn't see it zoomed out and didn't get in there and see what it looked like. But what I saw totally matched what he was talking about, and it looked exactly like those. And a lot of people theorize that creatures, things, aliens, came to this planet for, and actually interacted more often with the early human beings, and things like that. So I don't know, maybe they built those, or maybe there were creatures, or not creatures, but humans that built those as shrines, as kinds of things to the creatures that were coming from out of this world that they couldn't explain, that they worshiped like gods, perhaps. Um, but yeah, it's kind of a fascinating thing. Now, we can kind of spin this into something. There's a lot of people that believe, in star systems, and that there are other people out there, and angels. And, we could go into another hour of a conversation about angels and aliens essentially being the same thing, that there are creatures out there that actually are aware of who we are and what we're doing. There's even interesting theories about us being basically like a science project. Like, let's see how these people, this version of a being can behave and interact, and all of that kind of thing. But a lot of people believe that what we've come to know as aliens, as we've come to know as aliens, are actually possibly what other people have come to know as angels, as spiritual beings that have come. And I think maybe they could be one and the same. I don't know. That's kind of a different conversation for a different time, but uh, I don't know. It's all pretty fascinating, and it's all out there. And the question is there really more of them right now, or are we just more aware of it? What do you think, you guys? If you're still listening, yes or no, we're just more aware now, or there's more of them? Because it kind of it could be really alarming, right, to think that suddenly people are having more and more experiences because more and more are coming, which means that something could be happening. If it's just something that's always happened throughout human existence, it's not quite as big of a deal, right? Um, saw a video the other day, and it was a ton of people shared this one, and it was um, it was just a thing hovering in the sky. Sorry, I read a comment and got distracted. Um, just hanging there in the air, and it looked exactly like what any person would draw a flying saucer to look like, and it's just hanging out in the daytime sky, hundreds of people on their cameras filming it. I mean, what would be what would be the point of that? Like, why would that, be happening? Now, there is the argument or the perspective that the military has spacecraft out there that can look, um, look like something that's out of this world, and they can be testing things. But then you have to ask, what's the motivation there? Are they trying to distract us from what is really happening? Or are they trying to control the situation? I don't know. I think here's my opinion on that. I think if the government is doing that stuff, it's because they're trying to keep us from knowing about what's really happening, if that's really true. But I think there's perfect reason to believe that there would be creatures coming from out of the world coming to check in on us. Let's check. So Grace says she thinks there are more. Glad you chimed in, Grace. Thank you. Have a good night. Michelle says she thinks people are just more comfortable to share now. I think that's really true. I think they've always been, and we're catching it on video, right? Um, and Jonas says we're all a 7th grade alien project sitting in a jar in a shelf somewhere, and the alien kid only got a C- for us. Totally. Yeah. You know what? I've thought about that. Who hasn't thought about the fact that we're just puppets for some other larger group of people, or we are in a jar? Who, like, the little who's and like that live on the little teeny flower and think they have a whole universe? Totally. I think this is so plausible. I don't even know. Like, talking about future episodes, um people talk about past lives, right? And there are people, going back to this notion of angels and other beings. Like, there are people who believe they lived on an ocean planet at some point in their lives, which totally could be true. I do believe, as my listeners know, I believe in past lives, and I think I have some recollection of some of them. But I also think, what if you didn't really live on a different planet? What if you just lived in the ocean on the Earth? Like, I don't know. Still fascinating, equally fascinating, but it doesn't have to be a planet. And I guess my point is that our planet could really just be a planet in a jar. It could be, I don't know. It's kind of cool to think about, you guys, right? Like, let's just talk about, like, all the possibilities, and there's kind of some comfort to a certain degree in the fact that we really won't ever know until we die and move on. We're just never going to know. So it's kind of fun. Why not? Why not, talk about all the weird stuff and see what might come of it? Um, but, that kind of leaves me with a closing note. When you think about people who are wanting to come and view and see what we're doing, when I talk about people or read about how we are in our other lives and these alien or angelic spiritual beings that are watching us down here, there's this belief among mystics and things that the human experience has the widest range of emotions, and people who are in different lives and observing are envious of the fact that we have all the emotions that we can feel and experience with one another, the love that we experience, the sex that we experience. So who wouldn't want to come? I mean, we are definitely putting on a good show down here. That's what I'm saying. But I think they're out there. You guys, thanks for chiming in tonight. I'm super excited to be back. Next week, I have my friend Jason Hewlett coming on. He is the co-founder of the Canadian Paranormal Society. He's the co-host of Into Greatness podcast. He's an author, a filmmaker, and he and my friend Pete Wren are about to kick off new seasons of their We Want to Believe show on Paraflix. So tune in next Wednesday, and we're gonna chat with my friend Jason. Should be a lot of fun. All right, you guys, thanks so much for joining me tonight. I'm really happy to be back, and I'm so grateful that so many of you chimed in.